Continuing today with our summer study of Bhagavad-gita. Today, chapter 14, the three modes of material nature. So again, as we mentioned, these last 6 chapters of Bhagavad-gita deal predominantly with the relationship of the living being with the material energy. And this chapter is extremely significant in that regard because everybody is influenced by the modes of material nature. This is stated by Krishna way back in chapter 7. That everybody is under the influence of the modes. Now finally in chapter 14, Krishna is going to explain more clearly what that is. So, he begins by again saying, and this is repeated, I think I have to, I'm going to go through and collect all the verses where Krishna talks about how to achieve transcendence, because he makes that point again here. In verse number 2, by becoming fixed in this knowledge, one can attain to the transcendental nature like my own. Thus established, one is not born at the time of creation or disturbed at the time of dissolution.
Which?
Huh?
Where is
14:2.
2?
Yeah. And also in 1, he says, I shall declare to you this supreme wisdom, knowing which all the sages have attained to the supreme perfection. And in 2, by becoming fixed in this knowledge, one is not born at the time of creation or disturbed at the time of dissolution. So this is another instance of, or symptom of that person who has achieved transcendence, that they become free from the influence of the three modes of material nature. Now back in chapter 7, Krishna says that it's very difficult to conquer over this material energy, but those who have surrendered unto me can easily cross beyond it. So, and again he's saying the same thing. By surrendering to Krishna, by knowing Krishna, one becomes transcendental to the modes of material nature. And so Krishna begins by explaining the material energy being the combination of matter and spirit. And it's interesting, he says the total material substance called Brahman is the source of birth. This can be a little confusing because we've been explaining this word Brahman means spirit. So here he says the total material substance called Brahman. So again, this word Brahman comes up in different ways in different times, and it can be very confusing. So, the total material substance. Let's look at the purport there and see what Prabhupada says. This is an explanation of the world. Everything that takes place is due to the combination of Chaitra and Chaitragya, the body and the spirit soul, or matter and spirit. This combination of material energy and the living entity is made possible by the Supreme God Himself. The Mahatattva is the total cause of total cosmic manifestation, and that total substance of the material cause, in which there are three modes of material nature, is sometimes called Brahman. So, again, sometimes. So,
is a new experiment of the science is exactly what is say you now. The substance, like an atom, is in same time is a wave and matter. Yeah, that is Brahman.
Well,
In same
What is
time,
the wave?
that
it's a
is,
particle and a wave.
yes, is
This
a,
is physics.
yeah, that is incredible, because the scientists before many years tell the matter is matter, and invisible is nothing, is don't exist. But the new experiment have a result is the matter is same time in a particle and the frequency, the wave.
That's light, actually.
No, it's 100%.
Light. This particular idea of particle versus a wave, this is light.
No.
When scientists were trying to understand about light, because they see light moves as a wave.
I see another.
I'm a scientist.
Yeah, super.
And I know this specific example. It refers to light. It doesn't refer to atoms.
Atom in the same time is like particle and wave.
Okay, particle.
In a частица, je to particle.
Well, we can discuss it scientifically, but because I know that science. I have master's degree in that science. I studied material science particularly, so I know this very well. Matter, no, not wave. Sorry.
Ne kužimo o čem pričate, ali dobro, nema.
And anyway, that's a scientific discussion. I don't know what relevance it has here. What are you trying to say?
Because that is Brahman is material and unphysical.
Brahman is material and spiritual.
Yes, spiritual.
Prabhupada doesn't really say that. And you can have your own opinion. We are followers of Bhaktivedanta Swami. We take his opinion. He doesn't say like that. Here he says, is sometimes called Brahman. Okay, that total material substance. Now this total material substance otherwise is called Mahat Tattva. Okay, the Mahat Tattva is in one section of the spiritual sky. There's the Mahat Tattva. And from that Mahat Tattva, the material universe is manifest. Okay, this material universe is the combination of matter and spirit. So that's why I say it's when he says the total material substance. This becomes a little, okay. There's more background information than is given here. Okay, it's explained in more detail in the Srimad Bhagavatam as Mahat Tattva, and as Prabhupada explains here, Mahat Tattva is the total cause of the cosmic manifestation, and that total substance of the material cause, in which there are three modes of material nature, is sometimes called Brahman. I would have to reread that in order to give specific detailed explanation. That's explained in the third canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam in great detail. But Brahman is not spirit and matter. This is not correct according to Prabhupada. Okay? So, the personality of Godhead impregnates that total substance, and thus innumerable universes become possible. Again, this is explained in the third canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, that the material energy alone cannot act that is this matter. This matter does not form planets and all this stuff. It can only do that when the Supreme Lord himself enters into it. Again, this is explained in detail in the third canto of the Bhagavatam. So that's what's being explained here. When he says the Supreme Personality impregnates that material total substance, it means he enters into it with his energy. And thus the innumerable universes become possible. This total material substance of Mahatattva is described as Brahman in the Vedic literature, Mundaka Upanishad. So this is, again, it's complicated, and it requires some deal of study to understand. So the point I was trying to make about Brahman, that again, this is referring to Brahman, and Brahman is sometimes a confusing topic. It's because it's explained this way, that way. If you want, we can later. I'll pull out the third canto of the Bhagavatam and we'll look at it in detail. Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. So now with verse 5, we begin the discussion of the modes of material nature. There's 3 modes: goodness, passion, and ignorance. And when the living entity comes in contact with material energy, it becomes conditioned by these modes. So every living being is considered conditioned by the modes. Condition means the same thing as in the psychological term. Condition means one who becomes habituated to a particular pattern of behavior by a certain experience. And the most famous example is Pavlov's dogs. When they ring the bell just before feeding them, and then they ring the bell, and so this is a conditioned response. They become conditioned, associating the bell with food. The same way, we become conditioned that by having repeated experience with material energy in a particular setting, when we come to that setting again, we will behave as we had in the past. So the modes, they function both as cause and effect. The cause of making us conditioned, and the effect of that conditioning is that we'll behave in that same way again. So then there's 3 modes: goodness, passion, and ignorance. Now Krishna explains what they are like. The mode of goodness is illuminating, is purer than the others. It frees one from sinful reaction. Why? By increased intelligence and understanding what to do, what not to do, difference between good and bad. Those situated in this mode become conditioned by a sense of happiness and knowledge. Now this is, Prabhupada gives the example that this is people who are like university professors. Okay, they're studying knowledge all the time. Their world is, it's not very passionate, and they get a sense of well-being and peace, that this is good, we're good. However, this is a problem, that this becoming conditioned by this sense of happiness means that we will continue to be born in this world again. Right? So we like this, we're conditioned by it, and we will come back here to enjoy that again. Yeah.
The soul, all needs is happy. All needs of the soul is be happy.
The nature of the soul is happiness.
Yes. And why is not good be happy?
This is because this is material happiness.
Transcendental happiness, when you read the Bhagavad-gita, when you see the God, everything. That's happiness.
There's a difference. Material happiness is different from the others. So this is called sattva. Transcendental happiness is called Suddha Sattva. Suddha means above. Transcendental. Okay? Sattva, yes, what is that? That sattvic energy is connected with the material experience. And I'm happy here in this material world. Okay, I'll be born here again. Okay. Shuddha Sattva is happiness that has nothing to do with material energy.
No, all observation of this material energy.
Huh?
Only observation of this material energy for me is very make me happy.
Okay, this is called Sattva Gun. Okay? Shuddha Sattva is something different. Shuddha Sattva has no connection with the material energy. The jiva is by nature ananda, blissful. Okay? We have lost our sense of innate happiness by being absorbed in this material energy. When we come to the transcendental position, that ananda, we experience that ananda. In that ananda, that bliss, that happiness has nothing to do with the material energy at all. So they're two different things. Okay? Okay. The sattva gun, people feel themselves satisfied and happy. Okay? For example, this video we saw about Ladakh. Okay? This is a culture in sattva gun. And the people, you remember, they were saying they were happy. Huh? So this is real happiness. There's different types of happiness, happiness according to the gunas. But happiness in sattva gun is lasting. Happiness in rajagun is temporary. Happiness and ultimately leads to misery, and happiness in tamagun is just suffering.
No.
Suffering, it's some kind of happy suffering.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so now what's the result of it? The mode of goodness conditions one to happiness. You become conditioned. The mode of passion conditions one to fruitive activity. More, more, more. Work, work, work. Do, do, do. And the mode of ignorance conditions one to madness or illusion. Now, sometimes the mode of goodness is prominent, defeating passion and ignorance. Sometimes passion defeats goodness and ignorance, and other times ignorance defeats goodness and passion. This is called, in other words, a zero-sum game. Are you familiar with that expression? Zero-sum game. This means if one goes down, if one goes up, another one must come down. Okay, the total of the three always equals 100. So this one's 30%, this one's 30%, this one must be 40%. Okay, if this one comes down to 20%, these two have to go up. So it means, so what we see going on in the world for the last, actually our lifetimes, there was much more sattva gun when we were young, and that sattva gun is going down and tamagun is coming up. Okay, rajas is coming up some, tamagun coming up a lot, especially more recently. Of course, your experience here, because of the war and so on, is somewhat different, but in general, in the world, it is like this.
I have
When
opposite.
Huh?
I have opposite
Yeah?
situation.
Well, in that, even if 1950s, you weren't, that was before your experience, but in the 1950s, there was a sense of satisfaction without having to have a lot. Okay, just in America, people were starting to have cars and starting to have televisions. 50, I think television came 48 when I was born, 40 and 50 like this, and so, but people were more or less satisfied. The difference came in 1960. In the 60s, then we got transistor radios, we got plastic. There was no plastic before that. And all this kind of sense gratification really blossomed in the 60s. And then this is a mode of passion that people wanted more and more and more. There was many more things in the store and people were excited, eager to get more. More inventions, more things, right? So there was black and white TV, then color TV, and everybody wanted to have a color TV, right? So like this is what I'm referring to. So this is from more or less sattva, then to rajas, and then later, when we get into the 90s, there is a lot more cheating going on, a lot more gambling was going on. The gambling became common, right? The state was sponsoring lotto, so like this. The stores here, your stores are so closed on Sunday, but everywhere else they began open. So there was that sattva. You could feel that sattva on Sunday when everything was closed, right? And you go to church and it was peaceful. But then that's gone. Everything's open. And so Sunday then is more as much rajas as any other day. So there's no rest. There's no peacefulness. So, of course, again, your experience, you have your different country, and like you say, your experience is different.
Yes,
So.
because when I was young, I have lots of problems with my healthy, with my existence, with my partner's relationship, and I'm confused when
I see. Okay, you're speaking about yourself personally, not.
Yes, personally.
Okay, I thought you were talking about like you'll go, Croatia or something.
You spoke
Uh-huh.
German.
Okay. Okay, I understand. I appreciate that. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, when one goes up, the other one goes down. It's like that. But the general overall tendency for the world is increasing because this is Kali Yuga, right? So sattva will go all the way down, tamagun will come all the way up eventually. Okay. The manifestations of goodness can be experienced when the gates of the body are illumined by knowledge. This means there is peacefulness. The body is working, functioning properly. Okay? Illumined by knowledge, let's say. So there's gates of the body. The eyes, ears, mouth, nose, tongue, genitals, anus. Those are the gates of the body. So illumined by knowledge means that they're functioning properly. They're being used properly and they're healthy, like that. So when we live a sattvic lifestyle, a person is healthy, right? So that's basically what this is referring to. Because you live in Rajagun or Tamagun, it creates disease, then the gates of the body. Some part of one of those gates is going to have a problem. Okay.
Houston, we have a problem.
Yeah. When there is increase in passion, great attachment, fruit of activity, intense endeavor, and uncontrollable desire and hankering develop. This is easy to see. When there is increase in tamagun, darkness, inertia, madness, and illusion are manifest. So you can see that, for example, when somebody becomes intoxicated. That's an increase in tamagun. They lose their judgment. They make bad decisions, they become angry, they fight, they do stupid things. engage in degraded activities, so like that. When one dies in goodness, he goes to the higher planets. When one dies in passion, he returns to Earth. Because Earth is a place of mixed a good and bad result. So in passion, there's good and bad. You come back here. And in ignorance, one goes down to the hellish planets. Okay, another verse. Krishna is saying, when one properly sees in all activities no other performer is at work in these modes than these modes of material nature, and he knows the Supreme Lord who is transcendental to these modes, he attains to my transcendental nature. So again, Krishna is confirming what he said in the first and second verses. By understanding this, one can become transcendental. When one is able to transcend these modes, he can become free from birth, death, old age, and disease, and their distress, and enjoy nectar even in this life. This is another way of saying he's transcendental. 19 and 20, basically saying the same thing. And Arjuna is asking next in 21 the same question that he asked way back in chapter 2. How can we know who is transcendental? Back in chapter 2, Arjuna asked exactly the same question. Now Krishna is explaining the symptoms of a person who is transcendental. One who does not hate illumination, attachment, and delusion when they are present or long for them when they are absent, who is unwavering and undisturbed through all the reactions of material qualities, means steady, remaining neutral and transcendental, knowing that the modes alone are active, who knows, who is situated in the self and regards alike happiness and distress, who looks on earth, stone, and gold equally, who is equal to the desirable and undesirable, who is steady, situated equally in praise and blame, honor and dishonor, who treats alike both friend and enemy, and who has renounced all material activities. Such a person is said to have transcended the modes of nature. This is a repeat of all those symptoms that we've heard earlier in the Bhagavad-gita, Krishna describing the transcendentalist. So he just makes his point again and again and again. So basically this means samadarshan, equal to everybody, one who is not interested in fruitive activity, and one who sees one is free from duality, happiness, distress, and so on. And then again in 26, one who is engaged in devotional service in all circumstances, that person transcends the modes of material nature and comes to the level of Brahman. Here, the level of Brahman means transcendence, means spirit, unaffected by gunas. And Krishna says, I am the basis of the impersonal Brahman, which is immortal, imperishable, and eternal, and is the constitutional position of ultimate happiness.
Sattva gun, can you tell me what is different when materialistic person go to sattva gun and when devotee come to sattva gun? Is it some?
Okay, let's take the example of vegetarian. Okay, many vegetarians who are not devotee. They are healthy. Devotee are healthy. Okay. Prabhupada basically says we are not vegetarian, we are prasaditarian or something like this. So, devotee is sattvic. Devotee chooses sattvic way of life because the goal for the devotee is Shuddha Sattva, right? Transcendental. And to get there, you cannot get there from Rajagun or Tamagun. First, one step at a time. So first must come to Sattva, and then to Shuddha Sattva. It's very unfortunate that most devotees don't understand this principle. And if we can understand that because they continue to live in the city. City life means Rajagun. Okay? You cannot be in that environment without being influenced by it. So, and even more unfortunate, the leaders of ISKCON are telling devotees to continue like that. They're not encouraging them to go live in the village. They don't understand also. Or they deliberately are not telling. It's a science, right? We want to come to transcendence, and so we have to understand how is the body working, how are the modes of material nature working on the body, what is the influence of those activities, and so if we understand all of this, we can then mold our life in such a way so that coming to Shuddha Sattva becomes easy. And that's living this natural life in the village, right? Where you're free from Rajagun and Tamagun. You cannot stay in the city and do that. Because you stay in the city, what do you need money to stay in the city. So what do? Now, some devotees, when I speak like this, devotees criticize, well, show us some devotees who are living in the village who are transcendental.
Who is in village?
Yeah, right. In other words, so, okay, we're living here, have we become Shuddha Sattva? No, why? Because we're still influenced by the whole thing. You know, even though we live here now, we're not free, right? We just came back from the store today.
We have habits from town.
Yeah,
we have
right.
Habits from
So we want to get to that point, okay? And the world will change, and we will come to that. But we have to understand the whole science, how everything is working, how we're bound in this material world, and then how we become free. So Vedic culture traditionally it's a culture of sattva. Now also when I speak like this, devotees sometimes challenge, well, what about Dwarka? There's big cities, Dwarka and Mathura.
You must read the description of Dwarka. This is like village.
I know.
Dwarka is not this.
I know. I know.
Hold on,
But, devotees don't understand, they think like this,
village,
right?
You know.
Or Hastinapur. There's Hastinapur,
Yeah.
right? Big city, big beautiful palaces.
Yeah.
So they...
Where is? Big, beautiful.
Of course, I only hear about this in books, so I can't speak with great authority about that. But the point is that Vedic culture promotes the idea of this simple living, living on the land. So.
Yeah. Here is easier. Not we are transcendental, but easier here than in Prabhupada in Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, 16, 17.
Yeah.
this is Ura karma
Yeah.
factories and it must be stopped. Prabhupada said.
We live in the city, we have the benefit of the city, but we don't understand what it requires to make that city work. Okay? Oil. Where does oil come from? There's a lot of men who work hellish jobs drilling this oil out of the earth. This is very hard, nasty work. And then pumping it, putting it in ships, carrying it around the world. I had one job, I worked in a company, I was doing computer work, but it was a company, they made the seats for automobile. Okay? Now we get an automobile and we think, oh, I have a nice car. But we don't understand how much human suffering goes into making that car.
Footprint.
Yeah, just to make the seat.
Yeah.
These men, they sit there and they do the same thing that they can't get a machine to do. All right? It's hellish work. And the only way they can do that is when they go home and then they drink.
Yeah.
That's,
Like Charlie Chaplin.
yeah, it destroys people, right? Another job I had, I worked for iron foundry for Ford Motor Company, making the engine block for automobile. This is like going to hell. Big furnace, iron furnace, hot, dark, smoky, nasty atmosphere. Very low-class men do this work.
And nice block.
And we got such a nice engine, right? That makes my car go. But we have no appreciation how much suffering it requires to make this, right? Because we don't see it. It's somewhere out of sight. And so we just think, oh, I go and I put gas in my car, and that's easier than, working hard or, So, but we don't see how much suffering goes for that.
But that's easier than working hard. But somebody else worked hard for us.
That's right.
And that's not good.
That's right.
Yeah.